Hey guys, this video is going to be a quick introduction to lesson 4.1 on graphing linear functions using a table. So you did a little bit of this last year, so this hopefully is a quick refresher. All right, quick little refresher before we get going on graphing points. Remember, coordinates are x comma y. The x tells you to go left or right. The y coordinate tells you up or down. So if I said -5 comma 3, I'd go left 5, up 3. Some people like to remember it as you have to run, which is sideways, before you can jump, which is up or down. Okay, so I go -5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up 3. There would be my point. You always start from the origin, which is at 0, 0. And then a quick refresher on what it means to be linear. Well, to be linear, something needs to make a line. It has to be straight. Okay, it has to go up or down at a constant rate, which we are going to talk about more this chapter. So again, here's my line. It's going up at a constant rate. Here's the line going down at a constant rate. And almost all lines are functions. So most are functions, except vertical lines. Okay, so almost all lines are functions, unless you have a vertical line, because that would not pass the vertical line test. All right, so now here you need to have a graph out with some room for a table. So we are going to try to graph this function and see what happens. So when you were first learning how to graph in previous years, you learned that you could make an XY table. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is label my graph with the X and Y. And what you can do is you can pick some numbers. You can basically choose anything you want for X. So you can choose literally anything you want. Now, if you chose 100, that's not going to fit on our graph. So choose small numbers. What I like to tell my students is you should be choosing at least one negative number, at least one positive number, and 0. Okay, so we're going to do that to graph it. So I'm going to choose one negative number. I'm going to choose -2. Okay, so that's going to be my first X value. So what you do is you plug it in to the equation here. So it's going to be y equals, I'm going to do -2 times -2, because that's what I'm choosing for my X, and then -3. Okay, so -2 times -2 is 4. 4 minus 3 is 1. So my coordinate is going to be -2 comma 1. Okay, my next point that I am going to choose, so I chose -2 first. I'm going to choose 0. Again, I always prefer that you would choose 0 for one of your points. So I'm going to plug it in again. -2 times 0 minus 3. Well, -2 times 0 is 0. Minus 3 is -3. So my final coordinate here is 0 comma -3. All right, my next one that I'm going to choose, I'll choose +2. So again, I chose a negative point, 0, and a positive point. All right, so again, I'm going to plug in 2 this time. So -2 times 2, and then -3. So I get -4, take away 3 is -7. Okay, so I end up with 2 comma -7. Now, you can always choose more than 3 points. We'd really, since it's the first time, you could choose 5, but for time's sake, I'm just going to choose 3. So now I'm going to plot those 3 points. So I'm going to go -2 comma 1, 0 comma -3, and then 2 comma -7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Hopefully that's 7 that I counted right. All right. I'm going to connect those 3 points with a straight line, as straight as I can. I'm going to put arrows because it keeps going, because I could choose more points. All right, so you just graphed the following equation, y equals -2x minus 3. Now, as you graph that, you maybe have remembered some other ways to graph a linear equation, or you might kind of recognize, like, hey, does this show up on the graph somewhere? Does this show up on the graph somewhere? We'll kind of get into that in the next couple days as a refresher, but for now we're just going to graph using a table. All right, let's try our next one. So if you go to your next graph, we're going to graph the equation y equals 1/4 x plus 3. So again, you for sure have to choose 3 points. 5 is better. For time's sake, we're going to choose 3. So first thing, what I told you, you always need to choose a negative, a positive, and 0. Okay, so for sure I'm choosing 0. Now I'm going to look at this equation before I choose my points. Okay, it says y equals 1/4 x plus 3. So before I choose my x value, I'm going to think, hey, what's a number I can take a fourth of easily? Because that's what I'm plugging in for x. So I want to think of a number. I don't want to get decimals on my graph. Can you think of a number you can take a fourth of? Well, you could take a fourth of 4 really easily, a fourth of 8 really easily, a fourth of 12, a fourth of 16, but I want it to fit on my graph, so I'm just going to start with 4. So I'm going to do -4 and +4 for my x values. All right, let's go ahead and plug it in then. So I'm going to do 1/4 times -4 plus 3. All right, so I'm going to come work that out down below. So if I do 1/4 times -4, I'll put a 1 under here, I end up with -4 over 4, which is the same as -1, and then it still says plus 3, which ends up giving me 2. So this equals 2. So my coordinates are -4, comma 2. All right, if I plug in a 0, I'm going to do 1/4 times 0 plus 3. This is much easier because a fourth times 0 is 0, plus 3 is 3. So I end up with 0, comma 3. And then finally, I'm going to do 1/4 times 4 plus 3. Okay, if I do a fourth times 4, again, I get 4 over 4, which is 1, plus 3 is 4. So I end up with 4, comma 4. Now, hopefully we know that this is going to be a line, okay, because it's written in 2 variables, x and y. It doesn't have any exponents. So let's see what it looks like. So let's go ahead and graph -4, comma 2. So -4, comma 2, put your first point. Okay, 0, comma 3, that would be here. And 4, comma 4. Okay, it does look like it's making a straight line. So I'm going to connect those 3 points, draw some arrows at the end, and I have my line. All right, let's go ahead and try the next one. So you might be looking at this one and saying, hey, it doesn't look like it's in the form y equals mx plus b. We know lines can be written in slope-intercept form. So can we rewrite it? Right now it says x equals 10 minus y. Let's rewrite it so it says y equals. All right, so I could subtract 10 from both sides. I end up with x minus 10 equals -y. And I don't want it to say negative y. I want it to say positive y. So that's really like a -1 right in front of that y. So I'm going to divide by -1. Then I need to divide all of these things by -1. So I end up with -x. And then a negative divided by negative is a positive 10 equals positive y. Okay, so my new equation, let's write it up here, is y equals -x plus 10. All right, so now if we graph that, it should go pretty quickly. So again, we can choose really anything we want here. I'm going to just choose -2. I'll choose 0. I'll choose 2. Again, the more points you do, the better, but we're going to do 3 for time's sake. All right, so I'm going to plug in into my equation. I'm going to just highlight it up here so you guys can see this real quick. Okay, you got to be very careful on ones like this. So I'm going to plug in, it says negative, and then x is a -2 plus 10. So think to yourself, what's a -2 makes it a +2 plus 10 is 12. So I get -2, comma 12. Now that's going to go off my graph, but that's okay. All right, then I'm going to go 0. So I'm going to do -0 plus 10, which gives me 10. So I end up with 0, comma 10. Okay, my next one, negative, and then plug in a 2 plus 10, which gives me 8. So 2, comma 8. I'm just going to do another one just so we can get another point on the graph. Let's just do maybe 1. All right, let's do, so it turns into -1 plus 10, which is 9. So I get 1, comma 9. Okay, now I still have 3 points that are going to fit on my graph. So I'm going to start with this one here and graph 0, comma 10. Okay, that would be at the top of my graph. Hopefully this is a 10 graph. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, all right, and then 2, comma 8. 2, comma 8 would be somewhere about here. 1, comma 9 would be right here. Okay, you guys can kind of see the pattern. If I did -2, comma 12, it would be up there. All right, so it is going to make a straight line. You can put arrows. Now, if you wanted some more points, you can probably see the pattern. And this will be helpful when we get to this in a couple days. But I go down 1, over 1, down 1, over 1, down 1, over 1. So I could keep doing that, and I could get a ton of points on my line. And you just graph that equation. All right, let's look at the next one. This is a special type of line, and it's y equals 5. So let's think about one that looks like this. If I wanted to rewrite this in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, we still can. Okay, so my constant is 5. I've got y equals, I don't see any x's, so that's really like I have 0x plus 5. So I could rewrite this equation like that if I really wanted to. So now again, I can pick some numbers. Okay, so let's just say I pick -2, 0, and 2. Again, you can pick anything. So if I pick -2, I could do 0 times -2 plus 5, which gives me 5. So I got -2 comma 5. Now if I pick 0, 0 times 0 plus 5 gives me 5. So 0 comma 5. If I pick a 2, 0 times 2 plus 5 still is 5. 2 comma 5. Now what do you keep noticing? What is the y every single time? 5. So if I was really making a table, I could do this. I could be like, okay, if my x is 3, my y is automatically 5. Doesn't matter what I choose. If my x is 4, my y is 5. So whatever I choose, the y value is going to be 5. So if I'm going to graph that, I'm going to go -2 comma 5, 0 comma 5, 2 comma 5. Doesn't matter what I choose, my y coordinate is always going to be 5. Now if I connect those, this makes a horizontal line. And the equation again is y equals 5. So if it ever starts with y equals something, like let's say it started with like y equals 2, or let's do -2. It's going to be the same thing. Choose whatever you want for x, but every single y coordinate is -2. So I could be like, okay, I choose 3, my y coordinate's -2. I choose 10, my y coordinate's -2. Okay, whatever I choose, my y coordinate's -2, so it's going to be a horizontal line. So if you look at the next one where it says x equals -2, that's just going to kind of be opposite. So this time, every single x, no matter what, is going to be -2. So you can't choose anything different. The y, it doesn't really matter what it is though. So you can choose really anything you want for the y. I could choose 0, I could choose -2, I could choose 5, -3. All that matters is the x has to be -2. So let's see what this line looks like. Okay, so I'm going to do -2, 0. So go over -2, up 0. I'm going to do -2, -2. So -2, -2. I'm going to do -2, 5. Okay, I could do -2, -3, -2, 10. Doesn't really matter, but this is going to make a vertical line going through x equals -2. So if I gave you something different, if I said x equals 7, I'm going to go on the x-axis to 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I could choose 0, 7, or 7, 0, 7, 1, 7, 2, 7, 3. It's going to be a vertical line through x equals 7. So then just a quick little note of what we learned today so far. Any equation in the form y equals, so if it ever says y equals, like y equals 10, that means you choose anything for the x, but the y always has to be 10. It's going to be a horizontal line. Okay. Oops, I wrote the second part wrong. Any equation in the form x equals a number, so if it says x equals something, it is going to be, well, the opposite. So I'd be like 5 comma 0, 5 comma 1, 5 comma 2, 5 comma 3. It's going to be a vertical line.